Bonsoir à tous. Good evening. I'm Bertrand Buchwalter. I'm the director of the Institut Français in the United Kingdom. And I'm very happy, we are delighted with all the team to welcome you tonight for this exceptional event. We are very thrilled to be hosting today Amos Gitai and Jonathan Romney for this conversation. There will be lots of things to discuss, and so I'll keep my introduction very short, just to introduce our Amos Gitai and Jonathan Romney. Amos Gitai, you are in London for the London production of your play. It's like Rabin, Chronicle of an Assassination, which will be performed at the Coronet Theatre. It's going to start on Thursday, and it's going to be on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I hope that you have already booked your tickets, because I heard it's almost sold out. I'm speaking under the control of our friends from the Coronet, and we are very happy to organize this conversation tonight with the support of, in partnership with the Coronet Theatre, also in partnership with the Théâtre de la Ville, which was the original production of your play. You're also in London for the release, for the UK release of your last film, Layla in Haifa, which will be released on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not going to introduce Amos Gitai in too many words. You're many things. You are like a film director. You are an artist. You are like also now more and more versed into theatre. And we'll have plenty of opportunities to discuss and to explore all those dimensions. 4 of your films have been shown in competition at the Cannes Film Festival: Kadosh, Kippour, Kedma, and Free Zone, and 6 at the Mostra in Venice. You have received the Léopard of Honor in Locarno, the Roberto Rossellini Prize, the Robert Bresson, and the Parajanov Prize. You have also, and we just discussed about it, you have also been a professor, the first ever professor of cinema at the Collège de France. So in 500 years of history in the Collège de France, there were no lessons about cinema, and in 2018 to 19, you introduced the first cycle on cinema, and you can all access the conferences online. They are released on the Collège de France website. I would also like to recall that you have donated in 2018 your entire paper and digital archive of almost 30,000 items around the figure of Isaac Rabin to the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. These archives have formed the backbone of an exhibition that is going on now at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, but there are only a few days left before the end of the exhibition. But it's a wonderful exhibition that explores also the importance of archive, and I'm sure we'll have ample of opportunity to discuss your relation to archives tonight. The conversation tonight will be conducted by Jonathan Romney, who is a critic and writer based in London. Jonathan, you write regularly for Sight and Sound, Screen Daily, The Observer, and The Film Comment, and you are a visiting lecturer at the National Film and Television School. You're also a program advisor on French cinema for the BFI London Film Festival. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to both of you again for being with us tonight. Thank also to our partner, the Coronet Theatre, the Théâtre de la Ville, and also our public partner, the Institut Français in Paris, the French Ministry of Culture, and the European and Foreign Affairs Ministry in Paris. I think now we will start with a short clip.
We're going to start with a clip from a film called Free Zone, which is a kind of road movie. And this clip features Natalie Portman. So could we have Free Zone, please? Amos, this seems like a really good place to start, because in this clip you've got a sort of electro-pop version of a traditional Passover song, Hadgadia, and it does seem to represent in a way something that you do very often in your cinema, which is to confront modernity, often a very conflicted political modernity, with the history of Israel, the history of Judaism, the history of the Middle East, and often biblical references, which is something we're going to see in another clip. In fact, a whole film we'll show later. So maybe we can take this as a starting point.
No, I'm happy that you're all here. Thank you for the invitation, Bertrand. I think that we are, the problem, Jonathan, is that we are very often just living on the surface of what is strictly happening now. And then we, obviously, the resources are very poor, so we go to science fiction, we go to all sort of spooky realities. But actually we are sitting on many layers of history. And I'll tell you a personal story. I mean, my mother, we always have to start with our mother, right? So my mother was born in Palestine, in Israel, in 1909. She's a daughter of Russian socialist immigrants. My grandfather was a friend of Ben Gurion. She came there, and as we spoke, she went, when she was 18, she felt that it's very provincial. We're talking 1929, and she went to Vienna to meet Freud. And that's why Jonathan is sitting on the sofa to be analyzed, right? Then, eventually she went to Berlin. She saw Hitler making a speech in Alexanderplatz. She came back and so on. But when she came back, they told her that all the pioneers are in perfect psychological state, and she has no work to do as a psychologist. So she became a teacher. And she was a secular woman. She was not religious. But she decided to teach literature and Bible. Since we had this very strong relationship, because she was a critical lady, she was not a kind of a caricature of a Yiddish mame, that my son is the best and the most genius. No, she was critical. So she implanted in me the love and respect to these great archaic texts and the resonance that they have for the contemporary. And many of them, and even when I did critical works, which were not always loved by my dear countrymen, I would answer them quoting the text. They were surprised that I know something about it. So I would say, let's say, King David is considered by the biblical writer as an immoral guy, and you can imagine that the chief editor, you're a writer of the Bible, who was paid by the Davidic house, could have censored the text, but no, he put it on the record for future generation of Jews that this is a critical school of thought. So it means that you are authorized to say that the power is corrupted, is going in a bad way. And the biblical text about David is beautiful. The prophet Nathan goes to meet him, and he says that you are basically saying to him, you are an immoral person because you desired Bathsheba, Bethsabe, so you send her husband to be killed in the war, Uriah, so you can have her. So what does it mean? It means that critical texts, like the Hadgadia, which I, with the help of this wonderful singer, Hava Alberstein, who did this rock version, I could put on the face of Natalie Portman, can become an ingredient in a contemporary cinema. So we are not obliged to make this kind of very schematic scenario or cinematic thing, but we can juxtapose. And in a way, the fragment that you just showed is we can see the most minimal thing that a cinema can do. We just have a one shot, no cut, a human face. I think Natalie is doing a spectacular transition of emotions. In a way, we cut the shot a bit too early, but on some other occasion you will see it. Because so it's a range of big emotions that just a human expression. It's beautiful. And yeah. Sorry.
So to carry on in this vein of kind of personal sources, if we could talk about the beginning of your career, because you started off making a lot of documentaries. You actually trained as an architect.
Yeah.
And the first...
I'm only an architect.
Right. So the first major film you made, appropriately, was House. And how did this emerge? Because House was also, I think, your first conflict with censorship, because that was banned by Israeli TV.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 9 years of my life studying architecture, because my father was the architect of the Bauhaus. He was a student of Mies van der Rohe of Kandinsky, and he died when I was a soldier, when I was in the regular army. And so when I finished the military service, frankly, I didn't know what to do. So I said, okay, maybe I will study architecture. Now I say, retroactively, to speak to my dead father. I wanted to speak to my dead father, to understand what he was about. So I did diploma architect. I'm authorized to design a house for you if you want. And Alain came and saw a house I designed. It's not too bad, right? No. Okay. And then I got a grant and I did a master and PhD in architecture in Berkeley. And Berkeley was a fantastic period at the late 70s because I studied philosophy of science, Marxist economy of the third world, all sorts of things. And when I finished my studies, I went back to Israel. No, I did not want to be an academic, so I went back to Israel and I did this film House. And House is a story of one building in Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, which was owned until 1948 by a Palestinian gynecologist, that because of the Deir Yassin massacre, he and his family escaped the house, and the Israeli government in 1948, after the war, settled Algerian Jews. Later on, when I was doing the film exactly 40 years ago, a very well-known Israeli economist moved the Algerian Jewish family to a mass public housing, to Ashelem, and he decided to convert it into a villa. But in order to make it a villa, he has to bring workers from the refugee camps next to Hebron, and stone from the mountains of Yatta. So basically, it's a parable. It's a microcosmos. Every figure comes and tells a piece of the history, the Palestinian. We found everybody, and there is no voiceover, so it's just the series of biographies. And like many times in my life, this film coincided with major changes in the Israeli story, because it's the first time that the Labour Party lost power to the right wing, to the Likud. They nominated a new guy to head the television, and he wanted me to cut out all the Palestinian workers and the Palestinian owner, and I said no. The result was that I was gently suggested to depart from the television, And to make things worse, which is my character, I made another film called The Field Diary, which I shot in Lebanon, part of it during the 1982 war. And then my dear countrymen said, you cannot do work anymore. And that's how I came to France at that time, 40 years ago. So I think that, but I came to France, but my attitude to it is always, I'm critical, but I'm not hostile. Because I think people are contradictory and situations are contradictory. In the Middle East, as strange as it is, it's not a division between angelic and demons, but they are both, And I like complexities. And so all my films are full of complexities. On one hand, I have affinity. I love the landscapes, some of the people, and so on. And I in disagreement with certain people, even severe disagreements, like we'll see with the Rabin project. So, but that's my attitude, and I sail my way in a relatively calm manner, which disturbs even more the people who oppose it.
So you made a number of films outside Israel. You made a number of films in exile and about exile. And your films haven't only been about Israel. But I wonder what the situation is as an Israeli filmmaker. What does it mean to make films about Israel when you're elsewhere?
You know, it's a good question, Jonathan. I made a rule, okay. So I say to myself, I will not do documentaries when I'm not living in Israel, because in a way, documentaries, you take even more risks than fiction. I can do fiction, but I will do only documentaries when I'm in there, when I can be a subject of bad reaction and so on. And I was consistent. So House, Wadi, and Field Diary I did when I was in Israel. Then when I left, a very darling friend from here, actually the Brits are the first one who gave me work when I was... exile is a big word. When I was not living in Israel, you know. So Channel 4, which was before Thatcher destroyed it, was a good channel, you know. And they commissioned me, a wonderful guy called Alan Fountain, said, Amos, why don't you leave to rest a bit the Middle East? Do something else. So I asked him, Alan, what would you like me to do? He said, speak about the third world. So I told him, Alan, the third world is enormous. I don't know what to say about it, you know. And then one day I opened the fridge and I saw a can of pineapple, and I looked at it closely. It says Dole Pineapple, a division of Castle & Cook. And then it says produced in the Philippines, packaged in Honolulu, then distributed in San Francisco. And when I scratched the label, it says printed in Japan. So I took the label, I sent it to London. I said, here's the script, just get me 5 tickets around the world, and I'll tell you something about the third world. And we went. We did all the tour, San Francisco, Honolulu, the Philippines, which was under martial law in Colonel Marcos period. And it's a film I'm very proud of, you know. But that was the period that I was in Paris in between, and I didn't start yet to do fiction. We'll get to the fiction part.
Well, I wanted to ask you about your fiction, because when you started, it was a particular kind of fiction, and you're dealing with myth, and you're dealing with the Bible, films like Esther and Golem, The Spirit of Exile, which are not conventional fictions by any means.
No, the first fiction I did is Esther, again, because, you know, the beauty of the text of Esther, by the way, Esther is the only episode in the Old Testament that there is no God. God is not mentioned because it's in exile, it's in ancient Persia. And the minimalism and the beauty of this text was really stunning. So this is the first fiction. So actually people were surprised that after I did this House and Field Diary and all of that, I would go to a fable. But since I never spent even 1 hour in a film school, I felt completely free to do what I feel like doing. You know, so I asked the greatest French director of photography, Henri Alcan, who did La Belle et la Bête of Cocteau, Les Enfants de Paradis, Le Bataille de Rail de René. I mean, the greatest, wonderful person. I don't know even today how I had the audace to call him, and I never studied film, and to say, would you like to come to Israel and shoot this film with me? And he was a wonderful guy, really. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, c'est possible. And he came, and we did a fantastic journey in the country. And so the film is a series of tableaux vivants that I did with the help of Henri Alcan. But you know, essentially the story of Esther, which is a beautiful fable, it's about people who are very persecuted, and then at some point they become new persecutors. You know, so the parabolic meaning of the piece was clear. And I remember when the premiere was in the Tel Aviv Museum in Israel, luckily I was equipped with the Bible, because they said, why did you change the Bible? And I had the text with me, and I said, I didn't change it, but you forgot the end of the story, you know. So I think that without entering to the religious dimension of it, but I think there are really great texts which are part of our civilization and need to be. That's why I'm very admirative with Pasolini, who re-challenged the archaic texts, and Glaube Rocha and several other directors.
We can have another clip in a minute, which is from a film which has very personal roots for you, which is Kippur, which is about your experience. It's inspired by your experience in the helicopter service in the Yom Kippur War, where you were shot down. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, what inspired you to make this film at the time you did? Because obviously it was a lot later. But also, why was this period, why was the Yom Kippur War such a kind of pivotal moment for Israel and for the Middle East? What does this particular episode in this film represent for you on a wider scale?
No, it's true that I did it. The Yom Kippur War, we know it was October 1973. I was a student of architecture in Israel, and like all the guys of my generation, I was drawn to the war. I was put in a rescue team in little helicopters, Bell 205, that the Americans also used in Vietnam. And we did a lot of rescue operation, sometimes bringing people who were burning in tanks, and sometimes trying to save some pilots who were shot. And on the 5th day of that war, which is, by the way, also my birthday, the helicopter that I was in was shot down by a Syrian missile, and my co-pilot, which was like distance between us, was decapitated, and I was in this helicopter, And so I'm very happy to be in London tonight. But statistically, people shot in a helicopter, they don't come back, because a helicopter, not like a jet, cannot glide. So if it's shot, or it explodes, but if they touch the petrol, but it falls down and everybody dies, By coincidence, I'm here, So, and then I went to hospitals. I broke one of my vertebrae and so on. But so you asked me about when I did it. So just after the war, I did not want to speak about it, because I said, okay, I'm not going to convert myself into a war hero. And even my close friends, not all of them knew that I was in this. But strangely enough, around the time that there was a kind of a slight cautious optimism that the Middle East is moving to a more peaceful situation, I thought that maybe it's good to remind everybody what is the price of war. So they don't forget it now that they're going to make peace. Also, at that point, I was in France. It was the film I did after Kadosh. Kadosh was a big world success. Very often I say that my work was inspired by my country, but was made possible by the French. They gave me means to do cinema, strong cinema. And I could launch this kind of big project, which I did not want to do with very meager means. And so I decided to do Kippur. Actually, Kippur was presented in competition in Cannes 27 years after the event, which is by all means very long time to write a script. But the challenge of the film, but we can speak also after, it was not to make it a cult or heroism, but to show the war as a big rupture, a big anarchic event, a chaotic event, And this is easy to say when we're sitting on a sofa, but how do you direct the scenes? This was a very interesting challenge. I have to say that the one who really inspired me was Samuel Fuller, which I met because I invited him to participate in one of my theatrical performances. And he kept making a hole in my head that I should make this film, and it was really sweet and lovely and encouraged me to do the film, you know.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the clip and see if it's got any of the Samuel Fuller spirit in it. Can we have the clip from Kippur, please? Very often when Israeli filmmakers have made films about conflict, particularly based on their own experiences, and I'm thinking of films like Waltz with Bashir, I'm thinking of Samuel Maoz's film Lebanon, people say, almost like they have often said with American films about Vietnam, okay, you were traumatized, you suffered, but why aren't you talking about the experience of the other side?
I mean, I think the other side is death. There is no other side, you know, really, in a war, in my mind. And you know, the most touching thing that happened during the Cannes Festival is that the great Arab filmmaker, Youssef Chahine, probably at that time the greatest director, was very moved by the film and took all his cast, all his actors, and climbed the red carpet with us, the Israelis, you know. And I think he's right, you know, the enemy, it's a bit kitsch to say, okay, and then we get into also the politically correct formulas. I'm against these politically correct formulas. And obviously, Shaheen, when he came back to Cairo, because, you know, the Kippur War was not with the Palestinians, it was with Syria and Egypt. And so it's two regular armies fighting each other. And it was a very difficult war because it was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria on the Yom Kippur War and on Yom Kippur. So when Shaheen came to Egypt, he was called by the Union of Egyptian directors, told him, how come you climbed on the red carpet with the Israeli film? Are you out of your mind? And so on. He said, I think it's a good film. So I think we have to, which was, by the way, the title of my Bertrand mentioned, Collège de France. We have to cross borders. Because if we stay with the intoxicating, politically correct thing, we don't move things. And I think cinema is a very strong medium to cross borders and to propose to people on the other side that it can be an Egyptian filmmaker doing this film, and he would have been right. So, but you don't need, in order to do that, you don't need to make kind of angelism of the other side and so on. So that's it.
The previous film you made, which you refer to, Kadosh, which means holy, which is about the population, the ultra-Orthodox population of Mea Shearim, which is a sort of Israel within Israel because it's surrounded by its own cultural and social and religious borders. And you actually shot that film in Mea Shearim itself, which is a difficult place to enter. Both, you know, culturally and you know, in terms of actually filming there. Can you talk about that? And why did you want to? Why did you want to deal with that
basically, you know,
society?
it's continuing what I just said. I don't like when people say, Amos, you will not shoot in Mea Shearim. Don't have a big head. You will not shoot. So why not? Let me try. Maybe I cannot. Maybe I can. So. It's true that nobody have shot a film in Mea Shearim because obviously the ultra-Orthodox don't want to be filmed. It's a bit like the first clip that you show, Free Zone, that I shot most of it in Jordan. And most of my dear countrymen told me, Amos, come on, Jordan has security agreements with Israel, espionage, business, but not culture. They think that if you deal culture, you touch their heart. They don't want to have culture with Israel. So you tell me this sentence, I try to make a film there. So I wrote an email to the Royal Film Commission, and which is run by an intelligent woman who studied actually in London. And I didn't get an answer. After a few weeks, I got an answer saying, we watched some of your films, you please come to Amman, explain your project. I went to Amman, and I went with my production manager, who has a very clear name. His name is Gadi Levy, so you cannot suspect him of being Jérôme Dupont or something like that. And so we met this lady, and she said, okay, please explain what is this film. I said, because you received me really nicely, I don't want to bullshit you. It's a film about modernity. I'm not going to film Petra or camels in sunsets, So it's about modernity, it's about human relations. There will be 3 actresses, Israeli actress Hannah Laszlo, who won the prize in Cannes, a Palestinian actress Yam Abbas, and American Natalie Portman. And I did the film, and against all these nice guys who told me, don't do it, it's this and that. And also about the Orthodox water, you have to be strategic and a bit smart, it helps, So what did we do? We rented a shop in the Mea Shearim. So we had a kind of a base inside the neighborhood, that each time that we had trouble, we would withdraw to this base, And I remember one of the funniest things is the director of photography is Renato Berta, who did films with Jean-Luc Godard, with Alain Resnais, and so on. He said, Amos, I'm looking at the loop, and it's black. What happened? And I told him, it's just the Orthodox put his hat in front of your lens. That's why you cannot see anything. So he said, what do we do? I said, we don't shoot. We're not going to make a war here, So you stop shooting. We put the camera in the shop, and we wait, and then we'll shoot. And then all the scenes which are really inside the quarter, we shot at 5 a.m. because we discovered that even religious people sleep at 5 a.m. So you can find ways to do things, and it's very good to challenge the understanding that you cannot make a film there.
Back to the theme of crossing borders, you've crossed a lot of borders culturally and geographically. You've made films around the world, and you've made films in Europe, and you've moved between documentary and fiction. But you've also done a lot of adaptations. You've adapted work by Aharon Appelfeld, Arthur Miller, Elsa Triolet. So what's the appeal of working with different literary traditions?
I will do, because several authors, including Amos Oz and Yoshua, proposed to me, others. But the basis for me is that the author does not oblige you to use cinema as just an illustration to his book. When the author will tell me, Amos, I really want you to make a film exactly like my book, I told him, you don't need the film. Your book is great. Keep the book, And some of them did, and I said, thank you very much. Even, I don't want to mention names. They said, we don't want even money, just do a film. And I said, no. Appelfeld was a very gentle, very touching and gentle human beings, and he was very smart. And so I told him, listen, Aaron, the making a film after a book is a dialogue between 2 disciplines. And it should be like that. I will make an interpretation, not an illustration. And he was very sweet. He said, I'm curious to see what you will do. And I changed completely some of the parameters. When the film was selected to Venice, and I landed, I remember I came just immediately from the airport. He was very curious to see the film. And so it was a good experience. Arthur Miller, the same. We walked in his domain in Connecticut, and he told me about Marilyn and many things. And he nourished basically what I would do from his book. So I like essentially human encounters. And when I feel that it's enriching for me and for the other person, I would go for it. When I have to be executant, I don't want to be executant even in the bad sense of this word, but also I'm not an illustrator. So I said, keep the book, or somebody else will do it, and so on. So, and Elsa Triolet, who is a really interesting text of Elsa Triolet, Rosa Credi, I did it because I thought that it's a very good text, that Elsa Triolet was obviously the love of Aragon at that time, managed to capture something in the French society of the 50s, when France, after two devastating world wars, is wanting to plunge only in consumer society. They're only interested to buy washing machines and beauty products, which is basically stretching until today. But I think that she captured the moment of this transition of the French society, which was very engaged and so on. And I was curious to work. I did also Plutarch with Jean Moreau after the book of Jérôme Clément, which I also liked, when Jérôme Clément was the head of Arte for many years, discovered that his mother was Jewish and that his father actually wrote a letter to the prefecture in 1941 in which he said very clearly that he, Aryan, baptized, married to this Jewish woman, and she had to run for her life. And I thought that these aspects of the European and the French period were interesting.
On the subject of literature, I was looking at the titles of some of the conférences you did at the Collège de France, and the title that jumped out at me, really fascinated me, is cinema more authoritarian than literature? Maybe you could expound on that.
It is, it's part of the problem, because obviously when you read a novel or a poem, your mind can dress it with different images, with different iconography. A film is dictatorial, you say, this is the image. Let's describe what we are. We have a room, partly lit, two people sitting on chairs. Let's say I write it as a text. So let's say I read it now as a text. As a reader, I can dress it in different forms, not necessarily in what we see now. When we have the photo or the cinema of this, it is an exclusive interpretation. So that's what I mean, that it's dictatorial. Also, cinema, like music, is linear. You have to see it from the beginning to the end. Literature, you can go, then you say, actually, I didn't figure out what was said there. I can go back. It's like going to exhibition. You can establish your rhythm. In cinema, the rhythm is given. That's the way I want it. I want you to see the mud scene in a film in a sequence shot, not cut. So you have no rupture, or no condensing, no Eisensteinian montage, no compressing of time. I want you to see it in real time. What it takes to get a guy out of the mud, intentionally. So literature and so. You have to use it, you have to use the gadgets that cinema is offering us in that sense. And sometimes you have to go into much more abstract, almost against the text.
So we're going to have an interlude now that is a terrific example of your use of the long take, and it also in some ways bears relation to the theatre piece you've got here, because similarly, it's a multimedia piece. It uses imagery, it uses sound, it uses music and time. So this is something you made 8 years ago. It's roughly a 15-minute film called The Book of Amos, based on the biblical text. Would you like to introduce it?
Situate it. I did two. We were a group. We did a group with Sean Penn and Ken Loach and Inarito. We did a series which was called 9/11. And then most of this group, some years later, they called me from Los Angeles and they said, now we make another collection of short films, and now it will be called Words with Gods, in plural. And they said, would you like to do one? I said, but listen, I'm not religious, so. Yeah, but we have a Muslim, we have a Christian, we have a Buddhist. I said, that's fine, but I'm not. So, Amos, we want you to do. So I said, call me tomorrow, So they did. And they said, okay, so do you have an idea? I said, listen, I'll make an homage to the original Amos, not me. I mean, the guy 3,000 years ago, So they said, like Los Angeles people, who owns the droit d'auteur? So I said, you have to look for a shepherd on the mountains of Hebron 3,000 years ago. If you find him, he will sign the release, you know. So anyway, so I did it. I made a homage to the original Amos, you know. So the entire piece, which is, I think, 11 minutes, it's strictly, it's not my text, it's strictly quotations. And I decided to divide the text of Amos to 7 protagonists, women and men, in Hebrew and Arabic. And you will see that the text of this guy, Amos, a shepherd, is really talking about the Middle East of today. So.
דברי עמוס, אשר היה בנוקדים לתקוע, אשר חזה על ישראל בימי עוזיה, מלך יהודה, ובימי ירבעם בן יואש, מלך ישראל, 2 לפני הרעש. ויאמר, אדוני מציון ישאג, ומירושלים ייתן קולו. ואבלו נאות הרועים, ויבש ראש הכרמל.
هكذا قال الرب من أجل ذنوب دمشق 3 و4 لا أرجع عنه لأنهم داسوا جلعاد بنوارج من حديد فأرسلوا النار على قصور بن هدد وأكسر مغلاق دمشق وأقطع الساكن من بقعة آونة وماسك القضيب من بيت عدن ويسبى شعب أرام إلى قيرة قال الرب هكذا قال الرب من أجل ذنوب غزة 3 و4 لا أرجع عنه لأنهم سبوا سبيا كاملا لكي يسلموه إلى قيرة إلى أدومة وأقطع الساكن من أجدودة وماسك القضيب من أشقلونة وأرد يدي على قيرة فتهلك بقية الفلسطينيين قال الرب هكذا قال الرب من أجل ذنوب يهوذا 3 و4 لا أرجع عنه لأنهم رفضوا ناموس الله ولم يحفظوا فرائضه وأضلتهم أكاذيبهم التي سار أباهم وراءها فأرسلوا نارا على يهوذا فتأكل قصور أورشليم هكذا قال الرب من أجل ذنوب إسرائيل 3 و4 لا أرجع عنه لأنهم باعوا البار بالفضة والبائس من أجل نعلين
הבאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים והולך אתכם במדבר 40 שנה והקים מבניכם לנביאים ומבחוריכם לנזירים ותשקו את הנזירים יין ועל הנביאים ציוויתם לאמור אל תנבאו והנה אנוכי מעיק תחתיכם כאשר תעיק העגלה המלאה לעמיר ועבד מנות מקל וחזק לא יאמץ כוחו וגיבור לא ימלט ואוחז הקשת לא יעמוד וקל ברגליו לא ימלט ורוכב הסוס לא ימלט נפשו ואמיץ ליבו בגיבורים ערום ינוס ביום ההוא נאום אדוני
הלכו שניים יחדיו, בלתי אם נועדו. ישאג אריה ביער וטרף אין לו? הייתן כפיר קולו ממעונתו, בנביאים לחד. תיפול ציפור על פח הארץ ומוקש אין לו. היעלה פח מן האדמה, ולקוד לא ילפוד. אם ישתקע שופר בעיר, והעם לא יחרד. אם תהיה רעה בעיר ואדוני לא עשה. כי לא עשה אדוני אלוהים דבר, כי אם אמר, גלה סודו.
أم تحدث بلية في مدينة والرب لم يصنعها إن السيد الرب لا يصنع أمرا إلا وهو يعلن سره لعبيده الأنبياء. الأسد قد زمجر فمن لا يخاف، السيد الرب قد تكلم فمن لا يتنبأ. نادوا على القصور في أشدودة وعلى القصور في أرض مصر وقولوا اجتمعوا في أرض السامرة وانظروا شغبا عظيما في وسطها ومظالم في داخلها فإنهم لا يعرفون أن يصنعوا الاستقامة يقول الرب. أولئك الذين يخزنون الاغتصاب والظلم في قصورهم.
שימעו הדבר הזה, פרות הבשן, אשר בהר שומרון, העושקות דלים, הרוצצות אביונים, העומות לאדוניהם, אביה ונשתה. נשבע אדוני אלוהים בקודשו, כי הנה ימים באים עליכם, ונשא אתכם ואחריתכם בצירות גופה, והנה רבים, ויהי אשריכנה ארמונה, נאום אדוני!
השמרנים בציון והבוטחים בהר שומרון, השוכבים על מיטות שן ושרוכים על ארצותם, האוכלים קרים מצאן ועגלים מתוך מרבק, הפורטים על פי הנבל כדוד, חשבו היו להם כלי שיר, השותים ממזרקי יין ולב שמנים המשכו ולא נחלו על שבר יוסף. לכן עתה יגלו בראש גולים ושר מזרח פרוחים. נשבע אדוני אלוהי, נאום אדוני אלוהי צבאות, מתעב אנוכי את גאון יעקב, בארמונותיו שנאתי והסגרתי עיר ומלואה.
שימו את הדבר הזה אשר אנוכי נושא עליכם קנאה בית ישראל. נפלה לא תוסיף קום בתולת ישראל, נשאל עד מתי אין מקימה. כי כה אמר אדוני אלוהים, העיר היוצאת 1000 תשיר 100, והיוצאת 100 תשיר 10 לבית ישראל. כי כה אמר אדוני לבית ישראל, דרשוני וחיו, ואל תדרשו בית אל, ועד גלגל לא תבואו, ובאר שבע לא תעבור. יחד לא יגלה, ובית אל יהיה לאבן, דרשו את אדוני וחיו. לכן יען בושסכם על טל, ומסעת בר תיקחו ממנו, ותן גזית ניתן ולא תשבו בם, כרמי חמד ותחתם ולא תשבו את עינם. כי ידעתי, רבים פשעיכם ועצומים חטאותיכם. רבים פשעיכם ועצומים חטאותיכם. לכן, המשכיל בעת ההיא ידום, כי עת רעה היא, דרשו טוב מעל רע, למען תחיו. ויהי כן אדוני אלוהי צבאות איתכם כאשר אמרתם, שנאו רע ואהבו טוב, והשיגו בשער ושמע. אולי לכן אדוני אלוהי צבאות.
כמובן משפט וצדקה כנחל איתן, הזבחים ומלחה הגשתם לי במדבר 40 שנה בית ישראל.
זאת!
אדוני מצווה, ויקרא הבית הגדול רסיסים, והבית הגדול בקיר. הירוצון, עשה לסוסים, אם יחרוש בבקרים, כי הפכתם לראש משפט, אומרי צדקה לרענה. אני אדוני, הנה אדוני עומד על חומת ענך, ובידו ענך.
ימים באים, נאום אדוני אלוהים, ויש לך רעב.
ענך!
לא רעב ללחם, ולא
הנני שם אנך בקרב עמי ישראל, לא אוסיף עבור לו. ונשם ובמות ישחק, ומקדשי ישראל יחרבו.
הנה ימים באים, נאום אדוני. וניגש חורש בקוצר, ודורך ענבים במושך הזרע, והטיפו הערים עסיס, וכל הגבעות תתמוגגנה. ושבתי את שבות עמי ישראל, ונטעו כרמים, ושתו את יינם, שתו את יינם, ועשו גנות, ואכלו את פריהם. ובנו ערים נשמות, וישבו. ונטעתים על אדמתם, ולא ינטשו עוד מעל אדמתם, אשר נתתי להם, אמר אדוני אלוהיך.
I mean, it's always complicated to speak immediately after a piece because, you know, the best films I've seen start when the screening is over. So you have to figure out what was shown, and then it kind of travels in your mind, and so you become, which is what I spoke also about literature, you become more an interpreter, not a consumer. So you have what is actually, I'm speaking still about what we just saw, what is this kind of multi-layered thing. So we have the archaic text. It's quite incredible that in this text he speaks about Syria, about Gaza, about Israel, about social injustice. So this is part of what I spoke about archaic texts, because they're really very dense, and they tell us something. It's unbelievable that it's almost 3,000 years, and Damascus is there, Gaza is there, Samaria is there. I mean, so the resonance of this text is very strong, and sometimes I think it's good again to remind ourselves this kind of projection of this ancient text into the contemporary. So to jump into Rabin, which is a big jump, I think that you know, first of all, in 1994, Arte, the French-German channel, commissioned me to go and follow the negotiation, and I actually traveled in the plane of Rabin to Washington and to Cairo when he was negotiating with the Palestinians, and it was really a moment of opening, because obviously I think he put his finger on the main issue, the main conflict. Okay, it's very nice to make deals with the Emirates, with all of that, but I think this is the essential conflict, you know. Sometimes it's also, to be honest, used by the Arab world as a pretext not to move forward. So they use it. It's not that they love so much the Palestinian brothers, but they use it as a pretext to divert anger from the local difficulties that they have in each country, you know. And I've spoken to friends in Lebanon and in many other countries who are aware of it. So let's be honest about it. But still, there is a problem. And the problem, I think, Rabin understood that he has to confront this most complicated and complex conflict of all. Because the relation with Egypt was resolved by territory. With Jordan, it was not even a problem and so on. But the Palestinians, also their land, it's their memory. And it has to be confronted. So no other Israeli leader ever dared to confront it in such a direct manner like he did. And I found him courageous. Contrary to what he was accused by the right wing, I found him a real Israeli patriot. Like somebody who really wants to stabilize the Israeli existence in the Middle East, understanding that if they will not confront heads-on this issue, it will remain. Israel can give concessions to Syria, to all of that, but if it will not find a modus vivendi vivable with the Palestinians, it will remain there. It's not going to disappear. The Palestinians are badly treated by the neighboring Arab countries. They don't have, only in Jordan they have passports. In Lebanon they don't even have passports. In Syria they don't have, they're in refugee camps. The situation will multiply, it will become bigger and bigger, and it will not be resolved. It will not be resolved. And it can erode the entire Israeli project. So contrary to the dreams of all these guys like Netanyahu and some others, he's not the only one, that if we don't speak about them, they will just evaporate. They will not. They will not. Also, I found him simple. You know, when I spoke to Rabin like we are talking, you know, in this distance, and very simply, not without too much. He didn't. It was not. He had these qualities of certain generation of Israelis that I quite like. Very simple, very straight, heads on, and not like this American Republican Netanyahu who is very pompous. You know. You know, it was simple. I asked him very straight questions. He answered me in a sober manner. And I thought that this is important gesture and procedure to advance. So obviously, I did several interviews. I gave all of this archive, like you mentioned, to the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris because I thought this is a safe place to put it. Because when I considered it, Israel was still in the hands of Netanyahu. We never know, maybe he will come back. And Netanyahu also did a law closing the archives for another 50 years of the assassination. And the Bibliothèque Nationale in France was very enlightened. They put 12 people to work on my archive, and I thought it's a good, safe place. And also they are open to Israeli or Palestinian researchers to do what they want to do. But when he was assassinated, it was like a bit Kippur War, but different. It was a big shock, which is still, you know, we're now more than 25 years later. In a Shakespearean way, is not stopping haunting the Israeli reality. It's there. It did not disappear. So, you know, what can the art, Jonathan, do? Or the art or cinema? Not much. But if we preserve the memory, it's a good thing.
We'll end later on with a clip from that film, and you can also tell us how it relates to the theatre piece you have here this week. But we've got some time for questions first. So if anyone would like to start the bidding. Yes, please.
I'd like to ask you a question regarding the new government, if that's okay. I think both Israelis and Jewish people of the diaspora are really looking forward to this new government. As you mentioned, with Netanyahu, it was a status quo and there wasn't a lot of goodwill actions there. I was wondering, do you think that the new government of Bennett and Lapid showed enough of goodwill actions to start a durable peace process like Yitzhak Rabin had done? Maybe it's not enough time, but it's kind of, do you see a start of hope, maybe?
I mean, the only, let's say, I think it's not a small event, but I think to get rid of Netanyahu is a big deal. You know, it's like the Americans put aside a bill we spoke about it. Maybe Trump will come back. Maybe Netanyahu will come back. These are very ferocious guys, highly manipulative. It's not done. But the fact that we have a pose of this intoxication, manipulation, so on, it's a pose. The Bennett government will not take as a priority to deal with the Palestinians because it's a very hybrid government. They have the left, the Meretz, they have the Labour Party, they have the right wing, they have the Arabs. So this is not the top of their agenda, and it will not move a lot on this. But at least it will reinstall a much more rational and less paranoid agenda. And, you know, I was starting, Jonathan cut me because I spoke about the arts more than the direct politics, you know. So we have to be modest. You know, I think there is a big difference between the art and the politics directly. You know, I think the art has to be radical. Like you have to say what you want to say. Sometimes people will not like it. Sometimes they will boycott films. But you have to say what you have to say. I would even say no concessions. And good authors in different regimes, Soviet Union, whatever, said what they wanted to say, and they advanced humanity. Politics is a different thing. It's a modus vivendi. You know, otherwise you end up with Pol Pot, who went to the Sorbonne, and he said that everybody should work in agriculture. So it's not like that. They have to find a balance, and they have to work with balance. For me, it's a different mediums, and we cannot apply artists who give advice to politics that are not always right, and politicians definitely should not give us advice.
Okay. Yes, please. Anyone else? You're being very timid tonight. There you go. And in the middle. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening. What is the message you're trying to give with the medium on, you know, with the movies about war? If you said earlier to Jonathan that there is no other side, they're both losers. So when you make those movies, is it to, you know, as a therapy for the sufferings of your people, or what is the message?
A film is a film. I don't know if it's a therapy. You know, let's say when Picasso makes Guernica, why is he making Guernica? Because he's shocked by the bombardment of the Luftwaffe on this Basque village. He's a painter. So he transposes what he sees through his medium.
Yeah.
Now, the Guernica kept in mind the Civil War quite a lot, not less than many other things, you know. The horrors of the beginning of Nazism and the way that they use Spain as a kind of a experimental ground to make war. So I think that's what we have to do. We have to say things in a clear manner on what we think. And I use the Guernica because I think Picasso was a very smart person, also forbid the return of Guernica to Spain as long as Franco is alive. The MoMA wanted to keep it longer, but there was the testimony of Picasso, and now it's in Madrid, in the Reina Sofia. So, and then you ask yourself, what is the impact on politics, okay, of the Guernica? And I was surprised that about 2 years ago, when there was a new socialist prime minister in Spain, he put on the top of his priority to take out Franco from the Kitsch mausoleum, to throw out his bones and put it in a normal cemetery. And you ask yourself, why? It's not a priority as economic, as chômage, as stuff. It's only because of memory. Memory is a strong agent. Let's not underestimate it. And we have to conserve it through films, through theater, through exhibitions, through book. It will make its own thing, because the forgetness is the worst. So you can, painting did a good job, not alone. There were also militants, there were also filmmakers, Alain Resnais, La Guerre est finie, etc., etc. But this is the role of the arts, and art is not changing politics instantaneously. I'm against the Michael Moore demagogic documentaries. I'm against it, because it's manipulative. It wants to force you by manipulating the image, showing a shot of Bush, then a bomb and stuff like that. It doesn't work on me. I want to think, okay? But I think that the arts are a good way to begin thinking, and we will keep the memory of Rabin, and we have done it in documentaries, in fiction, in books, and this, in spite of the Netanyahu regime, which now ended almost 25 years, who doesn't like these works, but it will be there. And that's already a good beginning.
I would find it more useful, actually, if there would be more documentaries on the Sykes-Picot agreement, which has modernized...
Obviously, you can do the documentary you want. You know?
Can we just get in
and
one last question?
And you're not Picasso.
Excuse me, can we just get in the last question? Someone over there had a hand up, and we can just on the edge. Yeah, on the end by the wall. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I had the opportunity to watch Layla in Haifa in Paris a few weeks ago, and I was wondering what this film means to you as a kind of home in exile, as a place where you were born. Thank you.
I love my hometown, Haifa, because it's an understatement, you know. Tel Aviv is a very cool city. Jerusalem, one can say, is the Disneyland of all the religions, you know. They have, all of them are together there. And Haifa, there is some sort of understatement, and the human relation between Jews and Arabs are in the daily tissue. For me, this is peace. Peace is not just political declaration. Let's say I had to do a checkup to do the film when Layla in Haifa. I went to the Haifa hospital. The head of the hospital is called Bashar Karkabi, so he's a Palestinian, okay? He came down. I told him, Bashar, Dr. Karkabi, I mean, it's a conventional thing. Why do you come down? And he said something which really touched me. He said, we cannot afford to lose you. And I think it's a very nice, friendly gesture across borders. We started by that. And this is Haifa. So Layla in Haifa is about crossing borders, you know, and against angelism also. So it's full of contradictions. It's love, sex, between you know, most of my Palestinian actors live in Haifa because they don't want to live in Tel Aviv, which is a cool Jewish city, and they don't want to live in the villages under the gaze of their parents. So they live in Haifa. So it allows intimacy, really a human meeting. And this Layla in Haifa, which is just one night in a club, in a real club which exists. If you come to Haifa, I recommend to you Fatoush, this club, which is owned by a Palestinian in Haifa. It's really this place. It's a hub. So you have a gay relationship. You have Arab wants to meet a Jew. The Jew wants to meet an Arab. And it facilitates this relationship. And for me, this is the meaning of the real person-to-person raconte, which erodes the demagogy and the hatred and the racism.
Okay, and we will finish tonight with the trailer for Layla in Haifa, and we will also have a clip to close from Rabin, The Last Day. So before we do, perhaps you could just tell us about how that film led to the theatre piece, which is at the Coronet this week.
I think they are different. You know, the Rabin film is I think every discipline is different. You know, the theater that I recommend to all of you to come to Coronet, although there are no tickets. Right, Andy? It's done. Right?
I think you can still get some if you book first.
There are very few tickets left. So
last chance to sell it.
Yeah, last ticket sold. Yeah. So it's I'm not when I make a documentary, I don't try to do docodrama. When I make a theater, I don't try to redo my films. The film is, I consider it the investigation commission which was never done. That's the meaning of this film. So the film is really interrogating the assassination of Rabin. The play is telling the assassination from Rabin from a female point of view. It's like his widow, his wife, tells us, now it will be played by 4 women on stage, the way she perceived the assassination. And it's based on the memories of his wife, so it's but there is also music, live music. In theater, I like only live music. I don't like pre-recorded music. Like when we did a letter to a friend in Gaza, we had the santur and oud on stage, and now we will have a violin, and we'll have a clarinet, and we have the great Nathalie Dessay, who will do a piece of the War Requiem of Britain and some others. But
well, we've got to finish in a second. I have to be very fast.
We talked a lot about Amos' different facets and life and work, but there is an aspect that didn't come out and that I believe is quite important in his work, is his relationship with the actors. I mean, for instance, in the Rabin film, that is a fiction somehow, I mean, when you watch the film and you see all these judges and the people they question and so on, so forth, I mean, it's an exceptional bravoure of acting. So I would like to know, how does he choose his actors?
Okay, before you answer it, can I just ask, are we okay to overrun for a few minutes? Okay, fine, take it away.
I mean, I think this is important because he talked about literature, right? Tolstoy wrote Anna Karenina without thinking of Greta Garbo, right? Then now, when we think of Anna Karenina, we think of Greta Garbo, right? So this is what happens between cinema and literature. So the use of actors and the way you make them act is very important, I think, for a director.
I mean, it's pretty. In the beginning, Alain, I was not interested in it because I was really an architect. So for me, actors were a way to put text in landscape, I would say. And at some point, I played in one of my films because I didn't find a good actor to play it. I'm not sure I was the best actor, but I understood what it is about acting. You know, so I'm somebody who has to go through the experience in order to understand, you know. And now I love to talk to my actors. So but in every film it's different. Let's say in Kippur, which you saw a piece, it was physical. I asked them to run for 3 months and to carry heavy because they didn't want anyone wounded. And the war films have very bad record of people being wounded. Nobody got hurt. I wanted them to be in a good physical. Because also war, for me, war is something physical. It's not verbal, you know. When I did, so sometimes I like to understand their biography, you know, so I speak to them for hours. I don't do casting like they used to, like the guy with the sunglasses, almighty director, and the freaky actors. I don't like it so. When I choose somebody, I say to her or to him, let's have a coffee and let's talk it over. I look at their eyes. I like what John Huston said about casting. He said, he doesn't look at the way they look. He looks at their eyes, and he says, "Okay, I think you can do it." And I feel similar, but we can do a complete session for the interview we never did about casting.
Okay, well, we will finish tonight with a clip, first of all, from Rabin, The Last Day, and then the trailer for Layla in Haifa, which is released this week. But before we do, I want to finish up and thank you very much. Amos, for coming tonight, and thank you all very much for coming. I want to thank the Institut Français du Royaume-Uni for welcoming us and organising this extraordinary event, a very rare event. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thanks for the French Embassy for the support and promotion of French art and culture in the UK. I would like to thank our partners, the Théâtre de la Ville de Paris and the Coronet Theatre in London. The play Yitzhak Rabin, Chronicle of an Assassination, which started in Avignon, went on to the Théâtre de la Ville de Paris, and it's at the Coronet Theatre just down the road. So Thursday the 4th, Friday the 5th, Saturday the 6th, and you may still be able to get tickets, so jump in fast. Thank you to the public partners of the Institut, so the Institut Français in Paris, the French Ministry of Culture, the European and Foreign Affairs Ministry, without whom none of this would be possible. And thank you again, Amos. We will end with... Well, do you want to have the clip from Rabin? Because I think
you run the show.
Yeah, we'll do the both of those. Let's have a few minutes from Rabin, the last day, because I think it's a very important lead-in to the play, and then we'll end in probably. I haven't seen the trailer. I've seen the film. I haven't seen the trailer. I guess it's going to be in a slightly lighter vein, but. Just to show that Amos does also make films about having a great time in clubs. Laila and Haifa, thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
זה בלתי אפשרי. תומר ואני כבר לא שוכבים בכלל. אני אפילו לא יודעת כבר כמה זמן. יום אחד שכבתי במיטה שלי בחדר, והדלת של החדר שלי נפתח. ידעתי שזה הוא. أحس كل حركاتي مراقبة. عم بختنق.
זהיר אותך לגבי הערבים שתכירי בחיפה?
הם לא שונים מגברים אחרים.
תطלבי مني علاقة open relationship. أنا راح أخيب عملك.
I have a proposal for you.
I say, if you're thinking about something, then just do it.
כל חיים, כל מה שאת עושה, את עושה למען מישהו אחר. הוא נמצא בכל מקום, ואת לא נמצאת בשום מקום.
שום דבר לא יציב, הכל משתנה. אין יותר תשובות. אין יותר רגשות, רק דעות וחלקיהם.
עם בתדידיני אנזלי.
מוכן לחיות הרגע?
חשבתי שאת צעירה יותר.
צעירה יותר?
כן.
גם אני חשבתי שאתה יהודי יותר.